We are recording. That means we're ready to start. So I'm going to call this meeting to order at my little gavel. I don't hit it too hard. At 11:03 on Monday, July 7th, 2025. And the recording means that we're going to be putting this meeting on Zoom later. So you can check our newsletter for the Zoom link if you want to share it with anybody so they get to see our program. We're going to start this morning with Larry with some opening thoughts. Come on up.
Around here. Well, the last couple of meetings, I've been a little windy, so I'm not going to be windy today. I'm going to make it a little short, but you're going to have to pay attention. And this is not my job. This is a story about four people named everybody, somebody, anybody, and nobody. There was an important job to be done, and everybody was sure that somebody was going to do it. Anybody could have done it, but nobody did it. Somebody got angry about that because it was everybody's job. Everybody thought anybody could do it, but nobody realized that everybody wouldn't do it. It ended up that everybody blamed somebody when nobody did what anybody could have done. Thank you.
Thank you, Larry. I guess we're all one of those at some point or another in our lives. So we're going to have our membership report next, and then Lois, you'll be ready with treasurer's report right after that, and then we'll have birthdays. So you can come on up.
Good morning. This morning we have 26 members and 7 guests. Our guests are Mary Beth Green, and y'all can stand up if you will, please. And Rebecca Garcia, Joe and David Parker, Pamela Hildebrand, Jonah Harrington, and Lila Harrington. Welcome, and y'all come back.
Good morning. We have $1,027 in the bank, $1,027 plus a little bit of change. So that's where we stand.
Hi, we're moving right along this morning. I've got the birthdays. And I don't have the mic. Do I need to put it down? It was pesky. David Eyre is not here, but his birthday was on the 7th. Is today the 7th? And he's out celebrating. Cynthia Duval is here, and her birthday is on the 22nd. So come on down, Cynthia. And Tony Alonso's birthday is on the 23rd. I know he's around here somewhere. Yeah, come on. He's waiting for me to say that Aida's birthday is on the 26th so they can come down together. Isn't that cool? That's so cool. These are all tangled up. Okay. Well, I didn't give you yours, sorry. I wondered why I had so many left. Okay, and is Nina Billington here today? Because her birthday is also on the 26th. And so is mine. So we can sing now.
They're all planning a birthday party. All right, thank you, everybody. We're going to make the business meeting short and sweet because I'm looking forward to hearing our speaker today. The only thing I have for old business is that we're still collecting new or gently used men's t-shirts that we're donating to inner city development. And you can still bring those at the next month's meeting. And then by September, we'll have a fall project. Any size. Mostly for men though, but if you have women's or children's t-shirts that you want to bring, they'll accept those too. But new or gently used. And it's okay if they have something on the front as long as it's an appropriate something. New business is not very much, but just a reminder that there's no WOW or UMM this month. Games night is tonight and games day and chess will be tomorrow afternoon. And then the only other new business I have is that we know about all the recent flooding, and I'm just encouraging individuals to, if you want to donate somewhere, that UMCOR is a really great place to do that. We're not collecting we're at this point, we're not making a donation in the name of classics, but I'm just encouraging members to, if that's something that's on your heart to do, that UMCOR will help with flood relief. Any other new business anybody wants me to highlight? Or are we ready to get on to hear Amanda? That's what we came for, right? Well, I am delighted to introduce our speaker for this month. I've known her all her life. Amanda is our second daughter, and actually her younger sister is here as a guest, so she could hear some of these amazing stories that Amanda has to share. Some of you that have been church members for a long time remember Amanda's been coming here since before she was born, and she was baptized here and confirmed here and went to Sunday school and taught Sunday school and helped with youth and children's ministry and has just been a vital part of our church. Since she went away to the Peace Corps and came back to stateside, she's been working as a public school teacher, and now we're so happy that she's back in San Antonio. And she may tell you more about that, and if not, you can ask her at lunch. But I'm proud to introduce my daughter, Amanda Hildebrand.
Hello. It'll work. It'll work. But yeah, there it is. I'm Amanda Hildebrand, and I'm going to be talking about my time in the Peace Corps. I have some information about the organization for you, and a lot of pictures and some stories. And I hope you guys will ask me some questions too, because it's hard to like know how to really like explain everything. But yeah, does anyone know anyone besides me who's gone to the Peace Corps? Yeah. Wow. Like family members? Yeah. Grandson, did you say? Oh, what did you say? Friends. Friends. Yeah, that's awesome. Or anyone thinking about joining in the future? All right. Well, um, I'll start by explaining the reason why I decided to join. In college, I got a scholarship to study abroad, and we went to Guatemala with the College of Education. I started taking summer classes, and it was my first time ever out of the United States. And, you know, the United States is multicultural, and you would think growing up with diverse friends in school, I would learn about cultural differences and, you know, the way that would affect people's lives, but it wasn't really something that I was really exposed to or understood until I would travel and, you know, spend a significant amount of time in a foreign country. And I love that. And we volunteered teaching English lessons to a third grade class a couple of times a week. It was for like 4 weeks. It was very a limited amount of time, and it was awesome for me, especially as I was learning how to be a teacher. It was really cool, but I was definitely aware that it wasn't going to make a difference to those kids. It wasn't really going to make a lasting impact. They weren't going to learn that much just from our 2 times a week lessons. And our professors there helped us think about international development in a critical way. Short trips funded by American tourists, like mission trips or things like that, they might not do, they might do harm as well as some good. Like when foreigners come to a community and tell them, this is what you need to do, and they change things, and the community is like, well, we didn't really want that, and it's not going to make a difference. Or if unskilled Americans are paying organizations to do jobs that local people could have just been paid to do, that would have probably benefited the economy more. Things like that. But I loved it overall, and I wanted to do more, but I wanted to do it in a better way, in a more sustainable way, and like for a longer term so I could really see the difference. And after learning about the Peace Corps and their approach, I thought it would be the best way for me to serve and to make a difference. And I also like that the Peace Corps supported us. They had medical staff and training and safety structure, yeah, to support. So I decided to apply. The Peace Corps is a government-run organization. You'll probably know this already, but they partner with developing countries' governments to create opportunities for American volunteers. And the goals for each specific project are determined in collaboration with the two governments based on what the host country desires. But overall, the Peace Corps has 3 overarching goals, which are to help interested countries meeting their needs for trained people, to help promote a better understanding of Americans on the part of the people served. So me kind of sharing my culture. And then the third goal is to help promote better understanding of peoples on the part of Americans. So me coming back and sharing what I learned about foreign cultures. Okay. And there are 6 different sectors of jobs in the Peace Corps. Every volunteer has a job within at least one of these sectors. Sometimes they kind of overlap depending on the needs of the community. There's agriculture. So volunteers in the agriculture sector would work to strengthen communities' food security, like helping local farmers grow more food or conserve the soil, or they might organize farmers in the community and help them share knowledge or explore new income generating opportunities like creating fish farms or something like that that they haven't explored yet. Education, volunteers support students and teachers and parents. They help teachers learn better teaching strategies. Health volunteers, some might work to make sure people have clean water. They might work with pregnant women or in communities to help stop the spread of diseases like HIV. The economic volunteers, economic development, work mostly with small household businesses, mostly women, and they might help them manage their money, use computers, or write grants to expand their business. The environment volunteers, they teach about protecting the environment. They might form clubs or do projects to protect nature and natural resources. And then the youth volunteers work with youth groups, teaching leadership skills, employability skills, how to live healthy and successful lives, things like that. And the 2 most common sectors, the biggest sectors are education and health. Yeah. All right. Now for some trivia. Does anyone know what year the Peace Corps was founded? Anyone want to take a guess? Founded by President John F. Kennedy. Y'all can shout out a year. Y'all are pretty close. 1961. Yeah. Can anyone guess how many volunteers have served to date? Still active. Shout out a number. A lot. It's in the thousands. 250,000. Okay, next trivia. This one's how many countries do you think the Peace Corps has served in total or serves in currently? 10? More than 10? Well, total all time 144 and currently 60. All right. This one's a good one. The average age of a volunteer. Keeping in mind that the minimum age is 18, but they look for people with relevant like experience or college degrees. I went right after college, so I was 22. But the average age is 28. And one more. What percent of volunteers are over the age of 50 as of 2025? 10%? 20%? Only 7%. But there's a place. There's a place for sure. The Peace Corps is a great career change or retirement choice for a lot of people. There were multiple volunteers in that category in both my projects, and they were all perfect for their positions. And there's no maximum age to serve in the Peace Corps. All right. There are volunteers all over the world and almost every continent where people live. Uh, a small percent of these projects require that a volunteer know some language before they go, but most don't have any language requirements. Uh, that's mostly because people are placed in countries where, Americans are very unlikely to speak the language, like in Malawi or the Kyrgyz Republic, there aren't a lot of people that speak Tongan or Guyanese Creole. So you learn the language during the 3 months of pre-service training. Both of my projects were in North America, and the language requirement was that I had Spanish, like a little bit of Spanish skills before I went. But yeah. So um, to begin the process, I had to apply and go through a really long process to get cleared. Um, But after all of that process, it's 3 months of training with your cohort of volunteers, plus 2 full years in whatever site throughout the country they assign you to. So you know what country you're going to, but you don't know what specific city or community until you're already there and you're midway through training. There's other options for service as well. There's one option that it's a shorter time for very specialized um, specialized people. It's called Peace Corps Response. And then there's also a virtual service pilot that was introduced after the COVID vaccine became accessible. And that's just a few months long. So that's all my information about the organization. And I'm going to pause here. And then after this, I'm going to talk about my specific projects. So I wanted to see if anyone had questions now about the organization. Yes.
Yes, please. Yes, just that.
I'm glad you said that now. Everyone was being very, very patient. No one mentioned anything. Is that better? I'm closer to the mic. Any other questions about things I shared? Or you didn't hear any of it? That's okay, I guess. What? Oh, yeah.
Get any money?
Yes.
You get
She,
paid?
she asked if we got any money. The Peace Corps pays us in the local currency. They try to pay us like the equivalent amount of what a teacher would make. So it's, if you have debt or anything like that, it's not gonna be enough. But I didn't have any debt. So it was enough for me to make all my ends meet in the country because the cost of living is very low in all the places that I was. So I was able to pay my rent and buy food, and I had a little extra for travel. So yes, they call it volunteer just because they're not going to expect you to be saving money or anything. But yes, we did get money. Yeah.
I didn't catch, or I don't remember that in the application process, at what point are you expressing like the area of interest that you're wanting to work? Like, do you apply with the knowledge like I'm interested in working for the health sector or another sector?
Yeah. They've changed it in the past. So maybe for some of y'all's friends, they didn't get to choose. But when I applied, we got to rank our top 3 positions And all the positions are listed online. So they'll list the specific job with the country, with the date that you're going to leave and everything. So I got to rank my top 3 and I ended up getting my second choice, which I'm so glad that I did because it was really great. And then but later on, when I've talked to people more recently, they're able to just like apply for one specific spot. So you know the country. Yeah, they told me, I think it was during the invitation, I think after the interview, that's when I learned what country I would go to.
Where are the training sites and where did you go to train?
The training sites are in the country. So it's in just like in a city that all the volunteers can, so it's like a medium-sized city within the country. Sometimes it's usually not the capital, but it's like a large city near the capital, close to the Peace Corps headquarters in the country. And then from there, they can spread you all throughout the country. They'll place after the 3 months together. So the 3 months you're making friends with the other volunteers and you're learning together, you're having your language training and your technical training. And then after that, they'll spread you out. So I got to experience like different places within the country. Okay. I'm going to move on and talk about my 2 projects that I was a part of. So my first one was in Nicaragua, and my job was environmental educator. And my project goals, I mostly focused on goal number 1, help teachers improve their teaching practices. And we worked with the teachers to include more student-centered learning. And so to do this, we co-planned and co-taught science lessons with a few teachers. We also worked with students and families in the community on environmental issues. So we did trash pickups, built compost piles. We were trained in that picture on the right. That was us being trained on how to build ovens that diverts the wood smoke away from the person cooking to prevent health issues related to breathing in smoke. So yeah, and my pictures are a little dark, but my second project was in the Dominican Republic, and my job was Spanish literacy promoter. So I mostly focus on the second goal, increase students' literacy skills and access to reading material. So the illiteracy was something that the Dominican Republic, the Ministry of Education had identified as being a problem. And so I worked in a rural community and I would work in the schools. I would assess the students' reading skills in Spanish and I would pull out small groups to help them catch up. And it was awesome to see a lot of improvement. We also did teacher trainings as well and a couple of like family meetings. Yeah. Okay. That's another pause point. I know I didn't share a lot right there, but any other questions about my projects? Or after this, I have a bunch more pictures. Well, if you think of one, hang on to it. All right. Okay, so I've got a bunch of pictures and I'm going to try to explain how my life was, like my day to day. And since I was in 2 different countries, I have some of the pictures mixed together, but just whatever flag is next to the picture, that's where it was taken. So I was required to live with a host family in training and in my site. And they helped me a lot adjust to the culture and to integrate into the community. And I really loved living with my host families. They made my experience what it was for sure. I lived with all different types of families, urban and rural, and they always involved me in their family traditions and their whatever activities they were doing. And so in the top picture, right here, I was making nakatamales with the family. So we were wrapping the dough inside the plantain leaves and we were tying them off with the plantain bark. And that was one of their Christmas traditions, kind of like in Mexico where they make tamales. But these were slightly a different type of variety. Yeah, and they cared for me. As you can see, they celebrated my birthday. So yeah, it really was like a family. They adopted me. So this is what a medium-sized city would look like. In Nicaragua, my site was a medium-sized town, and my main modes of transportation were walking with a little bit of bikes and taxis. All the houses, usually in the cities, were connected in a row. And so they look small on the outside. Sometimes they have iron bars and they're all different colors. They're very colorful. And then when you go in the inside, they can be really large. Sometimes they have patios on the inside that are open, like open air. And like in this picture on the bottom, that was my host family's house. This was our courtyard in the middle of the house where we would hang our laundry. And that was an orange tree right there. Hmm. Yeah, the city life was very vibrant. Lots of music, people constantly walking around or just sitting outside their homes, very open, very connected. People would be selling fruit, or kids would be playing games in the street, or flying homemade kites, or shooting off fireworks. There was a lot of human connection and community, very different from the United States, where everyone's always, usually closed off in their houses. So that was something that was very easy to adjust to going there, but hard to adjust to coming back because it was very isolating coming back. And then in the Dominican Republic, I was assigned to a very small rural site. It had around 700 people living there. And I was renting this house on the left, the cinder block house. It was just a rectangle of cinder blocks with a metal roof. And inside it was divided into a couple of rooms with plywood. And my bathroom was around the corner, out like separate outside, where I had my shower and a toilet. But the shower was just like a place with a drain in the ground where I would just pour water. It wasn't really a shower. And the toilet had no running water. It was just kind of like a latrine type of setup, which was perfect because there wasn't very much water. So I couldn't go to the bathroom in the dark due to safety since it was separate from my house. And it was very a rural area. So there weren't very many people around. It was completely dark. And my bedroom in my rural site was here on the bottom. The Peace Corps supplied all volunteers with a mosquito net that you definitely want to use because it keeps all crawly critters off of you, not just mosquitoes. And mosquito-borne illnesses were very prevalent. In the Dominican Republic, I was required to take malaria prevention every day, but I did end up contracting dengue, and I was bedridden for a week. I was probably the sickest I've ever been in my life. That was really bad. Um, there were some rural areas that were difficult to access. For example, on the right picture, where this was a rural town where I went to school near my larger city. And to get there, I had to ride my bike up a volcano for about 20 minutes on a very rocky road. And I'm lucky I never fell because, there would be like gullies and big stones in the way. But yeah, so that was the rural lifestyle. But I loved it because everyone quickly got to know me by name. And even in the rural towns, it was very, very connected. You still had all the things like music, people walking, kids running. The kids would run through the fields, and sometimes they would take me along on their adventures. I have some pictures of the kitchens in the houses that I lived. Some houses had outdoor kitchens, and some had indoor or both. The outdoor kitchens had wood stoves, which I never felt confident enough to use. I was just thinking I was going to burn all my food, so I didn't know how to adjust the temperature. But the women there, they were very adept at that. The indoor kitchens had gas stoves. Like this one on the bottom was my kitchen in my house, in my little cinder block house. I just had a wooden table that you can barely see with the countertop little stove with the propane tank. And then yeah, that was pretty much my kitchen. I also had my dish rack and a little tiny cutting board. I didn't have a sink in my house. I washed my dishes on the floor in plastic water basins. I was gonna buy a mini fridge. I was saving up, but I never ended up buying one. I just bought enough food that would keep for a few days. Or if I was gonna cook something like really fresh, like chicken, I would just buy it just cook it on the same day. So I didn't have a fridge either. Let's see. Oh yeah, and then featured on this right picture is the plastic chairs, which is a staple in every household. There were always enough for guests. If I had to choose one object to symbolize my time in the Peace Corps, it would be the plastic chair. And I'll let you think about why. There's a lot of reasons why. Okay, the food was delicious. I ate most of my meals with my host families. It was mostly based on rice, beans, tortillas, yuca, which is cassava, plantains, and eggs, cheese, and meats and fish, things like that. But then the special part that was really different was the local fruits and the veggies, especially the fruits. There were a lot of tropical fruits that I didn't even know the names in English, and you can't really find them here. Or if you do see them in the store, there's like 10 of them in the HEB in like the specialty fruit area, and they're very exotic. But those were the fruits that would just grow everywhere. And then it was kind of funny because apples, grapes, and strawberries over there were exotic fruits. They were not common like they are here. It's like the opposite. My favorite Nicaraguan food was gallo pinto, which is fried rice and fried beans, and you would eat that for breakfast, lunch, or dinner. My host mom is here. You can see her with the cow hoof. She was making mondongo soup every week for the entire town, and she would cook it in huge pots. And mondongo is similar to menudo, which is intestine, stomach, and hoof meat. And she would always sell out completely. People loved it. I would try it. Every time I would always try a little bit, but that was the one food that wasn't really for me. And in the Dominican Republic, there was more variety because economically it's a little bit more, you know, I guess more advanced. But I'll give you two or three. My favorite breakfast food was mangu, which is mashed green plantains with fried salami, fried cheese, an egg, and sauteed red onions on top. My favorite lunch was called La Bandera, which means the flag, because it just had like kind of like the Dominican flag, it just had four sections: rice, beans, meat, and a salad. But it was so good. How they cooked it was wonderful. And my favorite street food, which you can see my host mom on the top picture cooking, is empanadas. They would have those everywhere. Okay, so I have some interesting things to share about water in my community. Uh, the video, the video here is me pumping water out of a well to carry to my house. My house didn't have running water in the Dominican Republic, so I would use the well water for washing dishes, showering, or mopping. To drink, I would buy water jugs. In Nicaragua, they didn't have water jugs. That wasn't very common. I guess people were just too poor to be buying water, and they would just drink the water. But the Peace Corps supplied us with a water filter made of a terracotta pot, and the water would just strain through the terracotta pot, and it would filter out whatever impurities were in there, and they would have a spout so that we could pour water into a cup and drink. Yeah, you definitely don't want to drink the water from the pipes. If you have running water in your house, they just pipe it straight from the river. So there's no sort of filtration. And there were frequent outages if you did have running water. Uh, for laundry, when they did have water, what you would do in Nicaragua is you would fill up your wash basin, you'd fill up the tank, and then that way you could wash anytime, even if there was no running water. And what you would do is you would soak your laundry with a soap sometimes, or you just use the soap right there. You would pour water with the cup from the basin into the other side that had ridges, and you could rub it with your hand or with a brush. And then to rinse it, you just keep pouring water until the water runs off clean, and then you wring it out and hang it on a line. And so that's how I wash my laundry. The hardest thing to wash were sheets because they were so big. All right. I don't have any pictures of my school in Nicaragua, but these are my rural school in the Dominican Republic. So you can see the second graders at recess making themselves dizzy. Every day, the kids would start out with an assembly. They would sing the national anthem and say prayers and things like that. And in the video in the background, you can see the main school building. There were 4 rooms. There was a 6th grade classroom, combined 1st and 2nd grade, combined 4th and 5th grade, and then a 3rd grade, which was split in half with plywood to create the principal's office. The kinder class was in the shipping container that you can see behind the kids in the assembly. There was definitely not enough space. The top picture shows the first and second grade class. It was completely full. The kids in the back don't have desks or chairs. They're sitting on tables. Later on, the ministry hired another teacher to split this really big class. But then where were they going to go? Because there was no more classrooms. They decided to split the shipping container in half with plywood to create another room. So there, long story short, there was not enough space for all the kids. And I did my tutoring outside because there was no extra room for me, not even a closet. My work in the schools was a lot of working with teachers to collaborate on things that they would need. And during the summer breaks, we led a science camp for kids. We even fundraised to take them on a field trip to a wildlife preserve on the near the site. In the oh, and I also gave English lessons because everyone thinks they want to learn English, but then no one realizes how much effort it really takes. So everyone would constantly ask me to teach them English, and I would have to say no a lot of the times. And then, yeah, I talked about my Spanish literacy tutoring. One of my students was an overage second grader, and she had repeated the grade multiple times. She was from Haiti. She was an immigrant. My community had a lot of Haitian immigrants. And the teachers, I think, kind of gave up on her. And I think everyone gave up on her because she would miss school a lot. She had really low attendance. Her teachers didn't really have the capacity to give her focused instruction. She was going to get held back again, but they moved her to third grade under the condition that I would tutor her over the summer. And so I would always go to her house, which was in the Haitian part of my small town. So it really helped me integrate with both parts of the community. And we made huge progress. And starting the next school year, she was on track. She was able to keep up in her classes. She was reading books. And her, along with all the other incoming third graders, were basically, I guess, not grade level to the US standards, but they were on grade level. One common teaching strategy was teachers would copy sentences, or they would write sentences on the board, on the chalkboard, and they would have students copy, which, if you know about reading, that doesn't really, that doesn't really support their literacy because the students could just copy it. They would copy the letters, but they wouldn't always know what they were even writing. So this was part of our training of the teachers. We would help them use more student-centered strategies, or helping them use different resources like decodable books to teach literacy instead of just having them copy. Let's see. I'll talk about this top right picture as well. That was me with hanging out with a group of Americans and Haitians and Dominicans. That was a mission trip from a Korean church in the United States that went to this Haitian town near my community. And their project was they came to build latrines. Well, the latrine was already there, but it had sheet metal walls. And so the kids took down the walls and they were going to rebuild them with cinder blocks. So they were going to improve the latrines. And the kids, they would work in the morning, and then in the afternoon, they would do a vacation Bible school. But they didn't speak Spanish, and the kids weren't really into the manual labor, so they would mostly sit on the sides. They ended up leaving after their few days with the work half done. And that was after 80% of the work was done by the locals anyway that were there. The kids weren't really doing the work. And yeah, afterwards, I was trying to talk to the people that were living there to try to schedule another day for us to come and finish it. And we would, I would call them, they would call me. We could never arrange a time, or I was busy, they were busy. And eventually they just told me they changed plans. They're just going to use the materials that were left behind on a different project. So that's an example. If you think back to what I said at the beginning about how short trips abroad can sometimes not have the intended effect. But yeah. Okay. When I wasn't working, I just spent a lot of my time being part of the community there. So I would go to community events, hang out with the loose children, But actually the loose children were the main source of my adventure, and I learned a lot from them. They would take me around. They knew all, they knew everyone, they knew where to go. They would take me walking and like for an hour deep into the fields. And if they introduced me to this man on the left, this Haitian man who I couldn't even talk to because he only spoke Haitian Creole, but they would translate for me and everything. And he chopped us some sugar cane. You can see him with his machete chopping us the sugar cane that we were snacking on. So that's the type of connections that I would make. Everyone was so connected with each other, and they really brought me in. This bottom picture in the middle is a funeral. As soon as someone died and they heard what happened, everybody showed up to the family's house, and they just stayed there for several days and nights as well, all through the night. And people would bring chairs. They would hang tarps outside for people to just sit on and just hang out and wait with the family. And there would be people making coffee, passing it out, making food, passing it out to everyone. And it was just a very community oriented place, very generous. I got to learn a lot about the culture or cultures because even within the country, there were different sections and diversity within the country. And so sports, music, games, baseball was very popular. In the Dominican Republic, dominoes was extremely popular. And I would play with the kids because they were about the same level of me in terms of gameplay. I could never figure out how to win against the adults. Yeah, they were really good. I think they would count ahead, and they would in their heads they would be like 10 steps ahead. We would participate in traditions like this one on the bottom right in Nicaragua. It was called Año Viejo, which was where they would create these dolls. It was kind of like Scarecrow. They would put clothes and they would stuff them with straw, and then on the New Year they would burn them. We would participate in all sorts of cultural festivals like Catholic saint holidays. Both countries were very Catholic. National holidays, dances, parades, like this one here. There was a lot of vibrance. And then the other element of culture is not always what you see, but it's how you have to interact with people. And it's the deep culture as opposed to the surface culture. It's how to be polite and show respect. Like if you can turn away someone's food or not. There's very, strict, I guess, cultural understandings that you don't, in Nicaragua, you don't turn away someone's food. That's extremely rude. Or if different body language or gestures have different meanings. Or whether you can, uh, like sharing rules about how to share your objects or not share or personal space and things like that. And that is a lot harder to learn all the deep culture about communication because you either have to be told by someone who knows both cultures or you have to figure it out by mistake and accidentally offend someone. And that's how you figure it out. Like in Nicaragua, here's an example. The men would always catcall women and the women would just ignore it and keep walking. But in the Dominican Republic, when I went there, people would whistle and I would ignore it and I would just walk by. But then a couple days later, I was gonna have a conversation like this. They would come up to me and they'd say, "You're not my friend anymore? I'm mad at you because you walked right by me and you didn't say hi." And I would have to tell, "Well, what do you mean? I didn't see you. You were whistling." That means something different to me. A whistle is just to get your attention. So to um, to understand how to interact. Or another example, like in the Dominican Republic, when someone walks into a room, like let's say we're in this meeting and someone shows up late, the polite thing to do is to loudly introduce yourself. Buenos dias, good morning, and just like shout out to everyone in the middle of the meeting. And that was very hard for me because in my culture, that's very rude because that's interrupting. And but over there, if you don't do that, it's rude and they'll look at you and they'll be like, "Why didn't you say hi to me?" Or why are you trying to, why are you being so weird? Yeah. So a lot of learning new cultures. I got to explore amazing places that I would never have otherwise visited. Beaches, mountains, rainforests, lakes, volcanoes, islands. As an American, I was able to fall back on my savings. Like if I wanted to kayak on a river on a volcanic island in the middle of a lake, I could spend the $30 on it. When someone maybe that lived there wouldn't be able to do that, but I had my, I had my American money that I could use, and I definitely took advantage of that. Uh, the picture on the right is very special because that's on my way to my house. To get to my site, I would take a ferry from the mainland about like an hour plus to get to this island, which is made of two volcanoes in the middle of the lake. And then I would take a bus around the other side of the volcano where my town was. And sometimes I would just wake up and think, is this really my life? Unfortunately, I had very bad luck near the end of both of my projects. They were both cut short due to things beyond my control. In Nicaragua in 2018, there was an outbreak of protests in the capital city and a lot of violent repression by the police that was very disruptive to life in the capital, especially. I was not close to the capital, so I was very safe where I was. I didn't take these pictures, but the embassy decided to remove us, uh, and that was only after being there for about 9 months, which was less than half of the time that I was supposed to be there. And I was feeling like, I was kind of at that point, I was learning the culture and I was barely feeling like things were falling into place. Like I was making relationships and I felt like good with my work. And so that was really frustrating. I had less than 24 hours notice to leave my community. And after that experience, that's why I decided to reapply. So that's why I've been to two countries instead of just one. It's supposed to be 2 years in one country, but I ended up doing like a year in one, a year in the other. Since in 2020, we were evacuated again due to the coronavirus. And at that time, it was very early. It was March 2020. So I know things in the United States were already bad at that point, but abroad, it wasn't bad at all. But the reason that they brought us back is because flights were starting to be canceled. And so it wasn't like if we needed to be medically evacuated to go to a hospital in the United States, we wouldn't have been able to do that. And so that, I think it was the first time ever that the Peace Corps evacuated every volunteer. They recalled every single volunteer. And that process also was very fast. It was overnight, basically. And I had been in my site for 10 months, in the country for a little over a year. And I was living on my own at the time. I was renting a classroom, and I had I had like a few hours to sell everything that I owned or give away or, just pack everything and go to the capital. And that was really hard to leave because I was right about to start a really big building project at my school, the one that had no space for the kids. I had been connected with an organization abroad that was fundraising. They had volunteers that were going to come and work and build the school. They had already cut down a tree to make space to build, and everything was already scheduled and arranged. And but yeah, there was nothing that I could do. That never happened. So it's hard. I wish I could have been there longer. And my family they were going to visit me too. My sister already got her passport. Um, but yeah, that was essentially the end of my service. Okay. So I think I've talked about some of this stuff already, but to wrap up, some of the things that I learned, one was that the different standard of living wasn't that big of a challenge as I thought it was going to be. I was expecting that to be the hardest part of my experience, but it was not. It was very easy to form a routine without the lack of modern conveniences. And I was even surprised by some of the things that I did see. Like my first host family had a running water shower, toilet, and they had like a big TV, Wi-Fi, and everything. And I was like, oh, okay. But then even later on, when I didn't have that, it wasn't a big deal at all. The hardest part was actually just the job part in the schools, getting teachers to listen to my ideas and try something new And it's always hard to get people to change their behavior and to, consider another point of view. And that was the most difficult part, especially because I was young and just the cultural differences too. Like here, it's very easy to just be someone's coworker without a personal relationship, but over there, you really have to have a personal relationship first before they have like a working relationship and before they'll kind of respect and work with you. So that was just the biggest challenge overall. The other thing I learned was about the culture. How I said it's way more than just language, food, and holidays. It's shared assumptions that allow people to understand each other and interpret a situation. Like in the United States, if um, usually when you enter a conversation, you assume that they're not going to point out your acne, or you assume that they're not going to point out your weight change, or if something happens, or maybe someone has like a wheelchair or some difference, or someone died and it's very sad. Those are things that you assume people won't talk about. But over there, that assumption is different. People do talk about that. And so that's something that you have to get used to, or you have to adjust to, right? Or like when I was teaching, I would tell the kids, okay, we were doing an activity, draw a quick T chart in your journal, just draw a table. And then so everyone, all the kids would get out their ruler and they would carefully draw a line. It would take forever. And I'm just standing there like, okay, that wasn't supposed to take more than 2 seconds, just boop, boop. But over there, the priority is neatness versus like in the United States, it's efficiency, speed, right? So I had to like slow down and understand, okay, well, they're not doing it wrong. That's their culture. That's more important. To me, it's not important, but to them it is. Mhm. Yeah, diversity. The world is extremely diverse, even within the country. Like before I started traveling, I think I had some stereotypes about Latin America, and I just thought spicy food and soccer. That was like the type of image that I had in my head. But both of those were uh, not really part of the culture in the countries that I went to. Baseball was way more popular than soccer, and the food was not spicy. The spiciest thing was black pepper. But yeah, even like the different cultures within, like in Nicaragua, there were people on the East Coast that had African and indigenous heritage that spoke English. And in the Dominican Republic, each accent or like each region had different accents and things like that. hmm But, and those are just two countries that I went to. So that just gave me a view of the world as being so, so diverse. And then the last thing that I have on here that I learned is what true generosity and neighborship looks and feels like. Because everyone was very generous with me, even as a foreigner. Um, I could just walk around. Everyone would wave to me and say hi. They would know me by name. And I could literally just walk into anyone's house, like without being invited. And just, they would tell me, here, sit down, sit down. And they would give me a plate, or they would offer me juice, or they would offer me something. And yeah, that was living in a community. I don't think, maybe in the past, that's how it was in the United States, or maybe in some small towns, but that's not something that I've ever experienced here. And that was a very awesome time in my life. And I do think about my experiences a lot. So thank you for letting me share with you. That's the last slide. I don't know how much time, but it's about 12. Yeah. Any questions from what I said? Uh-huh. Oh, yeah. I'll go with him with the mic.
When you were sent to Nicaragua, were you just put there all by yourself? Did you have a friend with you?
So I did, but not everyone did. In the Dominican Republic, I was by myself in that community. I was the only American. But in Nicaragua, in my town, there was another Peace Corps volunteer in the health sector. So I was doing education and she was doing health, and we did work together a lot. There was also another NGO that was not, it was not from the US government. It was just like a nonprofit. There were some Americans there as well. So there were like four of us that would always kind of spend some time together. That was really fun too. Yeah.
Did did you ever feel that you were in danger or any crime directed toward Peace Corps people?
Mm, I was always aware that there was a possibility of like danger because I definitely stood out a lot and I got a lot of unwanted attention that sometimes made me uncomfortable. Mm, the only crime was that a kid stole my pencil case from my house. They reached through my window and took it. And that was very disturbing to me because I know exactly who it was and they never fessed up. So that was that was one crime that that was, you know, against me. But yeah, I mostly just followed the instructions of my host mom and she told me like where I was living in my little cinder block house, she told me that I could not walk there by myself if it was at dark, like if it was at night. So if I was with her in her house, she would walk with me, or she would make her nephew walk with me, um, so that I could get there safely. Or, you know, if people would tell me, no, that's not a safe area. I wouldn't question it. I would just say, okay, I won't go there. Like you just have to listen to what they say. And then, because there's always people looking out for you.
How did you feel about your culture or our culture when you came back?
Negative. I was very sad. I missed the connection. I alluded to it earlier when I was saying how everyone was connected. But yeah, I was very sad to be back. It was the culture shock was definitely harder coming back. Yeah. Mm, I liked that um like the little conveniences, like laying on the couch was something that I missed a lot when I was over there because they don't really have couches that you just like lounge on. That's not really when you're in like living area, you're just sitting in chairs, but and like walking around barefoot was another thing that I really missed because there are just too many I don't know. But yeah, the culture, I don't know. No, there were good things and bad things about both cultures. Yeah, a lot of like gender differences were exhausting to have to deal with over there. And when I came back, I had a little bit more freedom and I had more anonymity to just go about my life. So that was a little bit freeing to come back to. But yeah, overall, my main emotion was sad and isolated.
Hi, Amanda.
Hmm.
I lived in China 17 years.
Hmm.
I taught at universities and I worked with a colleague. He was a former Peace Corps volunteer and he had some interesting stories about Nepal where he worked. Anyway, my question is, does the Peace Corps have a job placement program? And do they help you getting a job after your service is finished?
Um, they have something with the government jobs. They have some sort of, I don't remember the name, but it's like some sort of like priority hiring that you get for a year after you come back to the United States. But I feel like a lot of times the Peace Corps kind of sells itself. I don't know. I feel like I was able to use my experiences to my benefit to interview, especially being a teacher. That experience benefited me a lot. And I think it's something that an employer would want. But directly placing you in a job, no.
Um, I don't know how to ask this. Were you ever approached by any men that caused you problems?
Yeah. Yeah, I was. I was um I don't know. Let me try to think of one that I can share. Mm, yeah, a few come to mind. Yeah, there were definitely some times, but yeah, nothing too serious. There's one specific one that I was very afraid, but I can tell you during lunch maybe. Yeah.
while in the Dominican Republic, did you come across um, a saying, pelo malo y
Yes.
pelo bueno?
Yes, definitely. There was a lot of colorism and racism towards people with dark skin tones, which was really fascinating. Because from an American perspective, Dominicans and Haitians, they both have essentially like black skin tone. If you take a Dominican or a Haitian and you drop them in the US, they would be considered African American or black. But to them, based on their cultural or like their history of their two countries, Dominicans don't really consider themselves black. They consider themselves like Indio or like they're mixed. They align themselves more with Spain and their Spanish heritage, and they see Haitians as very uh, uh, inferior because of their skin tone, their darker skin tone. And there was a lot of racism towards Haitians, slurs, exclusion, uh, systemic discrimination, and yeah, calling them like, yeah, there were a lot. In my town specifically, there was more of like a mix since my town was very small and there was like a distinct Haitian population of immigrants that worked in the Bate close by. The Bate was like former barracks of migrant workers that eventually just like permanently stayed there. And so they started to integrate more. But yeah, that was definitely a thing. And people were fascinated with my hair. The kids would always want to touch it, brush it. And I had to tell them, like, I had to like get them, like, I had to like push them off of me a few times to like get them to stop. Yeah, because they would always want to touch my hair. But I would always just tell them, uh, well, look at my hair. I can't braid it like yours. Like your hair is so beautiful. You can put it into a braid. And look what happens when I try to braid. It just falls. And I would always kind of tell them like, we're both so beautiful, to try to kind of like, I don't know, empower them a little more because they had like the internalized like colorism towards themselves as well. Does that answer your question? Yeah.
Thank you so much for coming. I'm so happy. We have a thank you note for each one in your classes. And if you have time, you can stay for lunch. We're just going to be here and maybe people will have more questions for you at that time.
Yeah.
So thank you again for coming.
Thank you.
Well, that was fun for me. Our August meeting, Charles Olmsted, he's one of our members, is going to talk to us. He's an author and he's written a couple books about some history pioneering in Karnes County. And so he's going to tell us some cool stories about old time Texas and the things that he discovered in his research. And it'll be awesome. So Lynn, let's have you come and do a blessing for our lunch, and then you all are welcome to stay for lunch in the hospitality center. Anybody who's here as a guest, if you haven't already picked up a newsletter, there's a few on the welcome desk out here. And if you want to be added to our email list so you can get newsletters in the future and find out what's going on, just talk to me. All right, Lynn?
Let's pray. Heavenly Father, thank you for the beauty of the world. Thank you for those that serve. Thank you for the marvelous experiences that one can have in opening up their life to serve. Thank you for this program and letting us see a great example of that. And we're so aware right now of so many that are serving you through being helpful with the disaster that's happened with the flood. Thank you for the opportunities you give us. Thank you most of all, though, for the love you give us and providing for us and being our comforter. Thank you for food. Thank you for the hands that prepared it and for our fellowship together. Amen.
And with that, at 12:08, our meeting is adjourned. We'll see you at lunch.